large chunk of this movie now. But, when they're rafting on the Cheeto, he finally tells him, oh, he didn't look like himself, so I couldn't go in the room. Barley got way closer than I did. He got to the hospital at least. I didn't even leave Queens. The hospital is in Nassau County. So, I couldn't imagine seeing my father that way. And I regret not saying goodbye. But at the same time, I know I couldn't have brought myself to go in the room either, especially as a 14-year-old. And I don't know. I just, that whole scene brings me to tears every time when he tells that story. And worse later, but it's just, it's so poignant to my life, this whole movie, because of that aspect of this movie.
Well, you and the director have something in common, because this, of course, was based on his life, or the creator of the movie, was based on his life. So you and him have a lot in common with that. I have a similar story. I think both my grandmothers, I did not see, for the last time. And I was about your age too. I was about 14, 15 for my mom's mom. And I was about 19, 20, for my dad's mom. But again, at 14, 15, my parents didn't want me to be the last memory of, my grandmother just like that, tubes and everything, and respectful. And I respect their decision, and there's days where, maybe I wonder about it, especially during this quarantine. You start, like you said, you going crazy. There's days where I start thinking about things but yeah, I had some similar experiences, so I can relate to where you're going to, with this. However, though I'm an only child, my cousins are my brothers and sisters. So, we all share the same memories. We're all around the same age, if not maybe 10 years apart, on some side, but again, this is why, Disney brings in, and I mentioned art imitates life. This is art imitates life for you. And this is where you start to feel that this movie relates to you in some fashion, much like we feel movies relate to us in some similar way. This one really hits home for you.
It does. And what's amazing is my sister thought my whole life that I was just being a jerk. And this is what Ian thinks of Barley. He's a screw up. He can't do anything right. But the truth is he's been protecting Ian his whole life. And you know what? Now that I have kids, I understand you're not their friends. Look, I'm friendly with my kids. My kids love me and I love them and I want to play with them and I want to play games with them and but there's times you just got to do things and put your foot down in ways. And since Barley's not really the father, he has to do it in other ways, which makes him seem like he's a screw up. But he even says in the movie, they go to Manticore's Tavern, right? And Ian decides he's going to, and now here's what's amazing. Because Barley sees that he's afraid to do things, right? They go to the gas station and the father ends up picking a fight with the little fairy, and then the fairy's outside and Barley picks a fight with him, but he kind of stops him, and then they pull the father and knock over the bikes, and that causes a huge problem, whatever. But even before that, when they go to Manticore's Tavern, Barley's so sure that this is where you get this, and he's showing him the cards and everything, which, there you go, D&D 5e, by the way, but because once Wizards of the Coast got it, they added cards to the game because they had to, because they're magic. But you have this whole thing going on, and Barley wants to do it, but Ian keeps stepping in front of him, and Ian is actually the one screwing these things up. He freaks out Manticore, who won't give him the map, and then she snaps because she remembers who she was. And again, we have this going back to who you were, remembering who you are, not who you are now, but who you were and what made you you. So they get Manticore to remember who she was, and she kind of snaps at first, which is, in my opinion, okay, she shouldn't burn her place down, but she shouldn't scare little kids. But it's a normal reaction for someone to freak out when they realize they've changed that much. It's not, these weren't normal changes. She went from being someone who sent people on quests and risks and all this other stuff. She even has the saying, about risk. You have to take risks in life. And she went from that to worrying about investors And when she realizes that about herself, she snaps, which makes perfect sense to me. They end up not getting the map, but they end up getting the kitty map, and it shows Raven's Point. So they figure, oh, Raven's Point is the mountains up there. And Ian then talks him into going on the highway where they run from these sprites, but it teaches. But now he's already made him really small by accident because he messed up. And instead of making the gas can big and giving himself gas, he made them small. He made Barley small, so Barley can't drive. So now that's it. And what does Barley do? He talks him through it. He tells him, I know you can do it. Just merge now, do it now. And he does all the things that a father would have been doing. He taught him how to, he ends up creating half of the father, but he teaches him how to do the bridge. That bridge scene was awesome because he's like, do you still have the rope? Oh yeah, I have the rope. The problem is the rope's not on Ian anymore. but yeah, I have the rope. Keep going. Just don't look back. And he looks back, of course, but all these steps, he's teaching him how to become a man, quote unquote, how to become a man or how to become an adult, let's say. And he's teaching him the magic. And by the end, he's so good at it, he can run on the bridge and shoot lightning. And you know what? One of the biggest things in Barley's life was his car, was Guinevere, right? Was his van. And he'll sacrifice it in a heartbeat to protect his brother. Well, I'd sacrifice anything to protect my kids. You know, it's just so obvious that this is where we're headed. And because when they get to the bridge and he walks across the bridge, what do they see on top of the bridge? The Raven. And it's pointing somewhere. It was never talking about the Raven's point in the mountains. It was talking about the Raven's pointing. You know, the point. And then you follow it to another Raven, to another Raven, to another Raven, which then they find a chip that says water and an X, and X always means the same thing. And they use the father to get through that. And it's, you know, so now we're at the point where I know we've kind of jumped all over, but the most important part is what we've kind of already talked about. But once they go down the river, that's where the whole scene where he explains that he doesn't want that memory anymore. That and he doesn't explicitly say that's my last memory and I don't want my last memory, or that he never got to say goodbye, but that's exactly what he means. He doesn't want that being his last memory of his father. He doesn't want to not have said goodbye. He wants that chance. And, you know, when they get back to the high school again. And it's like, we did all this for nothing. We could have been at Raven's Point. And when they first see the beak, because Barley says to Ian at one point, you can't blame me for never getting anything right if you don't give me a chance to screw up. And let me tell you, that's exactly how my little sister was. She'd blame me for screwing up, but never give me a chance to get it right.
Yeah, it's part of life is learning from mistakes. And you know, that's how you learn not to do things or how to do things better. And that's a big part of life. I think Ian's lack of confidence and how Barley instills the confidence in him, you know, as he does, that's another teachable moment as well. There's, again, we jumped over the episode, but we hit the main point of this. And the main point of this is the fact that Barley was the focal point. He was the hinge through the whole thing. And that Barley, the movie's about Barley and the fact that he's got to become this father figure and how does he do it? And we discussed how he does it, and it's really well done. It truly is. More
importantly, while we see him become the father figure, he's been the father figure
the whole time.
For years.
The whole time. It's just Ian never realized it because Ian was always wanting to meet Dad.
Correct.
He's always wanted to meet him, and he finally gets the chance. And then during the dip, the sorrowful dip, he's checking off his things and he's realizing that, you know, through the memories that Barley was the one that was continuing, for lack of a better term, continuing a tradition, but being the father figure and having him learn. And having him learn and becoming the man and learning things. And it's really well done, you know.
It's insanely well done. And like you said, like you kind of gloss over the moment and how it happened. You hit the points that matter, but so when they get back to the school, Barley, you know, is like, I don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. I should have led us right to it. And X means that's where it is, or maybe it's a fire, and Ian goes right back to, see, you are a screw up. You do screw everything up because. So they used a magic spell to make them look like the mother's boyfriend, and when they say Barley is a screw up, Ian tries to say no, and the magic spell starts to fall apart, and that's how Barley finds out that Ian sees him that way, and he gets really upset. But at the end of it, after that is when they see the Raven, and that's when Ian starts to believe him again. They use the dad to get out of the water thing, which wouldn't have worked because as soon as they went to pull the dad up, the thing would have closed. But whatever, we'll ignore that. But as soon as that ends, they're back right at the school. Ian walks off with the father, right? And he takes him, he sits down, and he just starts crossing off the things because he's not going to get to do it because the sun's going down. Oh, and a major part of this movie we missed was when he created half of the dad, he had one day till the next sunset to get this finalized, and the father was going to disappear. So he walks away realizing he's never going to have these conversations with his dad, although he did just have a quest with his dad, by the way. Maybe he didn't talk to him, but his dad's presence was there, and the dad had given, the staff itself had come from the father to be given to Ian and Barley when Ian became 16, right? That's what it seems to be, because he wanted to see how his kids grew up. And on his deathbed, as the father was sick and dying, he researched all this and found out that magic was real and this is how you do the spell and whatever. And he must have known somehow that either Barley or Ian would be able to do it, because Barley doesn't have the power. Ian does. Barley doesn't have the ability to do magic. But as he's sitting there crossing off, he's not checking off, he's crossing off all the things that he wanted to do with his dad on his checklist. And as he's about to do the last one, he realizes, wait a second, Barley taught me to ride a car. Barley taught me to be more like Dad. Barley taught me. And he starts checking all the things off. And that's when you see the running montage of the things that he'd done and whatever. And he starts to realize he had a dad the whole time. Now he goes back, and Barley has figured out Chekhov's water fountain. That thing goes in the water fountain he was trying to save in the beginning of the movie. And when he does it, the dragon gem or whatever they call it, dragon crystal, it's Phoenix gem, reveals itself. He takes it out, and red billowing smoke comes out and tears apart the school to become a dragon, which, hilarious scene, by the way. After the dragon puts itself together, it turns around and has that cartoony dragon face from the side of the building. And that's the curse. Now, we didn't talk about the mother and Manticore. So the mother finds Manticore, and I'll run through this part really quick, but the mother finds Manticore, and they go back and get the curse breaker, and she dumbly says, it's the only one of its kind made of a steel that can't be found again. And she went from $10 to $10,000. Manticore paralyzes her. And when she changed the price, she goes, you can't do that. You said it was $10. She goes, well, I just did. So then when Manticore says, she goes, you can't do this. She goes, well, I just did. And the mother throws like $50 on the counter and walks out. But what's even cooler is, through all of this, the mother's finding out that Ian is more like Barley, and Barley is more like Ian. She starts to realize that Ian is, everyone keeps telling these stories of the son being, oh, he's been thick-headed, he's been aggressive, and this, that. And she goes, yeah, I know Barley. And they're like, no, the skinny one. And she's like, no, that can't be Ian. Ian's nothing like that. Because Ian's already starting to change in front of us from the very beginning of this movie because of Barley and because of what's happening. And she's learning this little by little as she goes. And then, of course, she runs into the sprites, that basically only know how to fly because Barley got them to fly because he told them they could. And as they were going to crash and burn and possibly die from a motorcycle accident, they all learn how to fly real quick to save themselves because they're forced to do so. The Manticore uses her wings again in this movie. I mean, it's so great. But as he's coming back, they realize now they can do this spell, and they do the spell, but the dragon's coming around. Barley goes to run off because he knows the father. He's met the father. And he goes to run off and fight the dragon, where they need the curse breaker to go to the core of the curse. The dragon's the curse. And Ian tells him, no, you stay. I may not have had a father, but I had a you this whole time. So he knows that Barley needs this more than he does. And the reason Barley needs this more than he does is because Barley never got that goodbye. And Well, it's really sad that this kid never sees his father. I get it.